John King, USA, CNN, weeknights 7 Eastern.
They see Washington as the enemy. They see themselves, in effect, as heirs to the founders, and that means that the present government of the United States is the heir to King George, and so Washington is the foreign tyrant.
And Fran Townsend, as someone who has seen the intelligence on these groups over the years as they rise, and Bart's reporting indicates they've risen quite a bit in the last year or so, what is it from a Washington government perspective that scares you about them?
Well, you know, when we first saw this beginning rise that Bart really describes well, going back to the immigration reform debate, during the Bush administration, we saw these militias pop up along the southwest border because they didn't believe their government was doing enough. And so at that point, the aim was to help their government. We then, in 2007, while I was still at the White House, saw these hate groups, these supremacist groups, begin targeting. And that was why, while I was still there, we went to then Senator Obama and encouraged him to take Secret Service protection earlier than had ever been granted to anybody during a campaign.
And Bart, you touch on that in the piece. You talk about the explosion of the number of these groups that the government is tracking from 2009, throughout the year 2009, how the number doubled and then tripled. And the Department of Homeland Security, as Fran noted, has been aware of this for some time. This is from a report back in April 2009. Prominent anti-government conspiracy theorists have incorporated aspects of an impending economic collapse to intensify fear and paranoia among like-minded individuals and to attract recruits during times of economic uncertainty. So the economy playing in that report from the Department of Homeland Security. But then, Bart, in your reporting, you take it a step further and you personalize it to a degree. Their resurgence now is widely seen among government and academic experts as a reaction to the tectonic shifts in American politics that allowed a black man with a foreign-sounding name and a Muslim-born father to reach the White House. Fair to say a lot of this is about race?
Well, yes and no. For sure, there are large numbers of people, you know, sort of on what you'd call the radical right, who are bothered by Obama's race or their beliefs about his religion or their beliefs about his country of origin. And so he's a kind of a uniting figure in that sense for the first time behind the three major streams of bigotry on that side of the movement. But many of these groups at least profess, and I think honestly don't feel any great racial hatred. That's not their motivation. They are against what they see as an overweening federal government, and they believe that the government is coming to get their guns, for example, or to declare martial law, or to move people into concentration camps. Now, for them, Obama is a kind of intensification. I mean, if you believe your government is alien, then the various ways in which Obama has been cast as alien from the American mainstream has a way of amplifying that.
And so, Fran, if you're a government official, a Homeland Security advisor, and you're trying to dedicate, whether it's intelligence resources, domestic or international, or money, programs, focus, where al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, or a home-based threat, where do you draw the line?
Well, the FBI has long, just to use them as an example, has long had resources devoted to both. But I will tell you, going back to 2007 and 2008, they have had to devote increasing resources to this domestic extremist. And we've seen cases, we've seen arrests in places like Michigan as a result of those increased resources. And
so Bart, there's two big issues in your piece when you read through it, and it's fascinating reporting. Number one, these groups, the militia groups that have spread up under the Patriot banner, if you will. Correct me if I'm mischaracterizing it. And then the lone wolves, people who have radicalized themselves, and perhaps they share information on the internet, or perhaps they get information from the same sites. And one of them is the Holocaust Museum shooter. And you say in your reporting, and I made some phone calls today to verify this, that von Brunn came, shot the guard at the Holocaust Center, but then in the investigation, they found indications that he wanted to kill David Axelrod, the president's top political advisor.
Well, that's absolutely right. He considered a number of targets, and he thought that the president himself was too hard to get to. But of course, in von Brunn's worldview, the Jews ran everything. Obama was merely a puppet of what he called his Jew owners. And so in that sense, Axelrod was a more valuable target to him than the president was. What freaked out the Secret Service and DHS and the FBI is that here you had a guy, again, it's not just talk, here's a guy who has demonstrated the motive, means, intent, willingness to kill, who's got Axelrod's name and other information about him in the notebook that he left in his car as he walked into the Holocaust Museum to open fire.
And so, Fran, again, what do you do about something like this? I was communicating with David today, and he refused to talk about this. He said he can't talk about this at all. But with some law enforcement sources, it says Bart's reporting is dead on, and they were very alarmed by this when they saw it. Is that more of a threat now with a lone wolf theory that somebody close to the president, maybe not the president himself?
You know, immediately after 9/11, during the Bush administration, there was a security assessment done on the president's staff. Most didn't require security, but, for example, the National Security Advisor wound up with the details. So did the Chief of Staff. And so it is not unusual. The Secret Service actually, as a matter of protocol, is constantly looking at threats around the president, including his staff. And so I can well understand why, when they saw this, they would have wanted to be sure David got in detail.